Welcome to the Beau Show. Can artists change political thought? Throughout history, that seems to be the case. Many times art has been used to criticize governments. Francisco Goya created art that criticized Napoleon, which inspired the subsequent massacre in Korea by Pablo Picasso, which criticized the American intervention in Korea, which one could almost liken to communist propaganda. Artists have had cozy relationships with the commies. More contemporaneously, what about feminist artist Barbara Kruger's print, We Don't Need Another Hero from 1986, which she portrays as society's expectation for kids to conform to gender roles? Well, I disagree with this depiction, because let's look at this famous photo from 1989 depicting Tank Man in Beijing's Tiananmen Square, taken by AP photographer Jeff Widener, which was one man's way of standing up to communist censorship and oppression. So do we need heroes? Yes, we do, male and female. Kruger's postmodern depiction has an unintended effect. It shows the fallacy of her intent. So what happens when artists do stand up to oppression? In this spirit, I interviewed two artists, rapper Zuby Udezue and visual artist Jacqueline Claire, passionate creatives who use their art to inspire others and stand up to oppression. First, let's listen to rapper and podcast host Zuby.
Zuby, thank you so much for joining me today on the Beau Show. Zuby, you're a rapper, and I want to know, does your rap have a certain level of consciousness to it, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything I do has a level of consciousness to it because I'm a conscious person. I don't normally define my rap as conscious rap per se. That is a sort of label title that some people use. Yeah, conscious rap, especially back in the 90s and early 2000s. But my music is simply a reflection of who I am as a person. I'm not someone who has sort of different personas, whether I'm in the real world or I'm doing music or I'm on social media. I'm very consistent. I go by the same name and I'm the same person all the way through. So my music, since I started it back about 15 years ago, has always just been about representing who I am, what I believe in, and my aspirations and message I want to get out to the world.
And I know you said even politically you don't put a label on anything that you are either, not Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, you're just you.
I'm me. I've joked before that I'm a progressive in Saudi Arabia, a liberal in Nigeria, and a conservative or libertarian in the UK and USA, which is only a half joke because these labels are pretty relative. Even in the UK and in the USA, liberal and conservative don't mean the same thing. Libertarian's not really a term that people even use in the UK.
Yeah.
It's much more familiar in the US. So other people can label me how they want. I tend to just consider myself a free thinker and someone who's trying to make sense of the world and understand and do things in a way that makes sense and encourage people to think in the process.
You know, you mentioned that there was a label of conscious rap back in the 90s. I'm thinking back to Tupac, like the song Changes, that's just the way it is, things will never be the same. Do you think that rappers today have that same level of reflectiveness other than yourself? And if so, who do you think they are?
I think many rappers do. You know, in terms of people who are more mainstream, you've got guys like Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, Logic, Drake to some degree can be, you know, very introspective when he wants to be. There's still plenty of rappers who are out there who have substance to their music and who are more introspective and thoughtful, essentially. Of course, you've got the party rap, you've got the drug rap, you've got gangster rap. You have all of that, which has also always existed. I think people sometimes forget that's been there for many, many decades. So you've just got the different sides to hip-hop and rap music, and that's something that's always been there. I think an issue that can happen sometimes with the mainstream stuff is the imbalance. I think sometimes the music that's more degenerate or negative or promoting violence and so on can be pushed more heavily than the stuff that's more thoughtful, but it's still there.
Let's talk about a level of reflectiveness you had. You had a tweet that said the following: what if the people who oppose lockdowns, mandatory masks, and coerced injections weren't selfish, science-denying idiots who wanted everybody to die? What if they were rationally trying to protect people's civil rights, freedom, mental, physical, and financial health and children? Do you think the tide has turned in terms of people's legitimate objections to lockdowns?
It's absolutely turned. And I can say that very easily because I opposed lockdowns from the very beginning. So going back to March 2020, when it was still flat in the curve, 2 weeks to slow the spread and so on, just 2 weeks, guys, I was like, no, this is a bad idea. And the level of pushback and the things people said to people like myself and others who, there were only a few people who were really vocally saying that at the time. Most people were in favor of the lockdowns. And people were aggressive. I got called a lot of things. I got called a grandma killer more than once. I was told that I'm selfish, I don't care about other people, I'm pro-COVID, I want people to die. All of these nasty terms saying that, I was putting people like you are putting the economy over human lives and so on and so forth. And of course now, what's the thing that people are talking about? The economy, inflation, across the West, across the world. These are the big issues people are now worried about and talking about. Oh, you've got problems with mental health, you've got problems with childhood development, you've got poverty problems, increasing price. These are all the things that I was warning early back in 2020. I also just knew that these measures, lockdowns, this was something that was never even considered before. And it was something that was actually advised against in the WHO's own pandemic procedures. The WHO itself never actually supported lockdowns. So there was a lot of the flip-flopping about, we need to listen to the World Health Organization and we need to trust these experts and these people. But then when those experts actually said, you know what, actually we're not in favor of masking, we're not in favor of mandatory lockdowns, that just got ignored. And somehow the narrative just got spun and it kept on chopping and changing. But now you can say that lockdowns were a mistake, or you can say the lockdowns were a bad idea or destructive. You can say that you're opposed to the mandates, whether it's masks, whether it's vax mandates and so on. You can say that now with very little pushback. But if you said it a year ago even, let alone 2 years ago, man, people were not happy.
What about your personal ethos led you to resist that? Was it a consciousness just knowing this is not common sense, or was it something about, I don't want you telling me what to do, the government that is?
It's not about the government directly not telling me what to do. I think that would be a little immature and perhaps narcissistic. It was more that this isn't how our countries are supposed to work. If you live in the USA, you live in Canada, you live in the UK, you live in Western Europe, you live in Australia, the government isn't even supposed to have the power to lock you in your house and to stop you from running your business, stop you from going to school, stop you from going to church, close down all the churches, stop this, since when do they even have the authority to do that? That's not supposed to even be a thing. That's not how these countries are supposed to operate. Now, if it was suggested that people stay at home, or it was suggested that perhaps that people wear masks in certain situations, or it's suggested, or, oh, look, you can do this, these are the different things you can do, and here are the potential risk factors, depending on your age, your demographics, and so on, then I have no problem with that. The problem was the coercion. It was the force, it was the coercion. And then also just logically, it didn't make sense. For considering the way that the virus spreads indoors. It doesn't spread outdoors. That was known from early. It hardly affects children. Young people, extremely high survival rate, very low hospitalization rate. This was known from early. This was known from spring 2020. So what do? You force everyone indoors. Now everyone's indoors, rather than telling people to go outside. Remember, they shut down beaches.
Right.
They shut down parks. They were arresting surfers, arresting people paddleboarding, arresting people going outside and tanning. Those people are at no risk whatsoever. That's where you are absolutely not going to get this virus. And they did the opposite. Then they shut down the gyms. The fast food stayed open, giant supermarkets stayed open, but you shut down the gyms, you shut down the barbershops, you shut down this and that, and it wasn't logical. It didn't make any type of sense, assuming that the goal was genuinely taking care of people's health and trying to reduce the risk of people getting sick. And we haven't even gotten onto the censorship of various potential treatment options, censorship of people who are just trying to make sense and propose different ideas. This includes doctors, this includes scientists, this includes, if people are like, oh, well, you're just a rapper, it's like, okay, well, there's doctors and there's scientists who are out there who from the beginning have been saying, wait, this is not a good idea. There's these other options, these are things we need to consider. And that just all largely got ignored.
Sounds like Zuby has a lot more sense than the CDC. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, I don't have an agenda.
Now let's hear from visual artist Jacqueline Claire, who wants to awaken children's inner spirituality and elevate the human spirit through artistic creativity, free from any outside boundaries or influence. She quotes the great T.S. Eliot, who said, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started, and know the place for the first time." Here's Jacqueline Claire.
Jacqueline Claire, thank you so much for joining me today on the Beau Show here in Las Vegas. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Jacqueline, I want to talk with you about the intersection of art and freedom. and where we are today. First of all, do you think that art is truly free in the United States, and why or why not?
Well, currently, I think we do have freedom. It may or may not lead to the most lucrative path or the most popular path, but thank heavens, I think that we do have an amount of freedom that an artist has to choose to take. And that's really the choice. We have a lot of self-censorship because people want to be popular, they want to align with Pride Month or whatever it is. They want to show that they're with what they perceive as the in crowd.
Yeah.
And the fact that we currently still, I think, legally have freedom, but that so many people are willing to not step out and say what they really believe or make the art, that's the scary part, because we can self-censor to the point that we have aligned with forces that prevent us from having freedom. So I think it's really important for artists to push on that envelope of freedom while we still have it, because that's the scary part. That's what we're all fighting against, that we will actually lose the ability to say what we believe because we're afraid of being put in jail or anything. Right now it's just Facebook jail, and I think I think there's enough courage that we can deal with that.